Good morning. It looks like a rainy day here in Brooksville as Tropical Storm Cristobal passes by on its way to the coast up near New Orleans. And today we're still, of course, in the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah, the book that's just full of surprises. I mean, Nehemiah is the last book of the Old Testament if you look at it in historical order. Now, Nehemiah is kind of about in the middle of the Old Testament. That's where it's placed physically. But on the timeline of events, Nehemiah would be the last historical book of the Old Testament. And it's about Nehemiah rebuilding the walls around Jerusalem. The temple's already been rebuilt, and now the walls around Jerusalem are being rebuilt. And it's really cool that 500 years later, when Jesus was walking around, it was the same temple and the same walls that were built at this time. This is called the Second Temple. And we know that temple is no longer there, but most Christians believe it will be rebuilt before Christ returns. So we do have an expectation that this temple will be rebuilt again, and this will be called the Third Temple. Now, this book is so full of surprises. Last week we heard how they stopped the work on the wall to deal with economic injustice. The rich people were profiting and making huge amounts of money off of the poor. They were mortgaging their homes, mortgaging their businesses, and repossessing those and foreclosing on them and taking ownership of their land and their homes, as well as enslaving their children. So the rich were getting richer and richer while the poor were suffering. But the neat thing is that when Nehemiah confronted them with this, they actually repented of their sins, changed their ways, and they gave back everything they had taken, everything they had repossessed and foreclosed on. They returned to the people. And that was an awesome thing to see. You know, sometimes God would just come on someone's life, someone that you think is unchangeable, that's set in their ways, someone that is not really doing the right things or thinking the right way, and God can completely change that person. Like it says in the New Testament, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. All things are passed away. Behold, all things become new. And Christ can do that in your life today. He can come and live and dwell in your heart and completely change the way you think and feel, the way you interpret life, the way you look at life, and the life you're living. So I'm going to read to you now this 6th chapter, then we'll go back and look at it more closely. Now this chapter, I call this Fake News and Conspiracy Theories. This is so relevant to today. The same things were happening to Nehemiah that are happening in the world today. Fake news and conspiracy theories. Nehemiah had these enemies that were fighting against him from the very start, and they were led by a man named Sanballat. Now when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab, now that's the only time in the whole Bible the word Arab is used. Geshem is the only person we know of in the Bible that was an Arab. We can see history is still going on where the Arabs and the Jews are in conflict with each other. And Geshem the Arab and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built a wall and that there was no breach left in it, although up to that time I had not set up the doors in the gates. Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, "Come and let us meet together at Hekephirim in the plain of Ono." O-N-O. That's not Yoko Ono. That's the plain in Judah called Ono. But they intended to do me harm. So it was a fake meeting. It was a lie. It was a trap. They were deceiving him. Let's get together. Let's talk things over. Maybe we can find some common ground. But the real plan was to catch him, perhaps kill him or imprison him. So I sent messages, Nehemiah, sent messages to them saying, "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should I stop the work while I leave it and come down to you?" And they sent to me 4 different times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. In the same way, Sanballat, for the 5th time, sent his servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written. Now here it comes with this open letter. It's not sealed, it's not private. It's information that's open. Anybody can hear it, anybody can see it, anybody can read it. It can be repeated. It's not a secret letter. It's an open letter. We're going to find out this letter was full of lies and fake news and laid the foundation for a conspiracy theory meant to bring Nehemiah down. In it was written, quote, "It is reported among the nations," and Geshem also says it, "that you and the Jews intend to rebel. And that is why you are building the wall." So first of all, they're saying something very vague. And this is one way to spot fake news, when the source is very vague. And they say, it is reported among the nations. Among the nations. What nations? You can't fact check that. You can't go on YouTube and find out what nation this is coming from. You can't send a reporter to look into it. It can't be verified because it's so general. The nations, what nation? Well, if you had said it's been reported in the nation of Lebanon by the Secretary of State that this, was said, you could go and contact that person and ask them and find out the truth. You can verify whether it's true or not. But when people lie, they use these very general terms. So watch out for that when you're looking for fake news. It is reported among the nations. And Geshem also says it. Now, Geshem, they're using him like as a witness to verify the truth of this lie that they're telling. Who is Geshem? Geshem is the Arab. And he's one of the three main enemies of Nehemiah. So they're trying to verify a lie with an enemy of Nehemiah. So you got to watch out for that. People will try to verify what they're saying by taking people that are opposed to you, that are of the enemy camp, that are on the other side, people that hate you and they want to bring you down, and they're going to go on the news or on YouTube and they're going to tell the same lie and try to verify its truthfulness just by repeating it and repeating it over and over. It is reported among the nations, and Geshem also says that you and the Jews intend to rebel. A little anti-Semitism in there, a little racism in there perhaps. You and the Jews are going to rebel. And people always think the Jews are rebellious. And the truth is that over the centuries the Jews have been persecuted so much. But they've always stood their ground. They've always kept their identity. And yes, they have rebelled against injustice throughout the centuries in this world. And they still do today. You and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are building the wall. Now here's something that's done a lot. People place thoughts in other people's heads. Or they assume thoughts in other people's heads to support what they want to say. Now Nehemiah never got up in public and said, we're rebuilding this wall because we're going to rebel. We're going to break off from the Persian Empire. We're going to start our own country again. We're going to be independent and free. We're rebelling. Now, if Nehemiah stood up and said that, you could go on YouTube and see a video of him making that public statement. If Nehemiah had written this down in an open letter or document, you could bring out the document. But that's not the case here. They are making this up, and they are putting thoughts and words in his mind and in his mouth that were never said. So this is how fake news is often started and spread. By assuming people's motivations, assuming people's thoughts, and saying things that were never said by the person, and convincing people that that's what they believe. That's why you're rebuilding the wall. And according to these reports, you wish to become their king. So once you tell the basic lie, you lay a foundation where you can just use logic from there, things that sound logical, make sense to people, to create a conspiracy theory. So the first lie was, you're rebuilding the wall because you want to rebel against the Persian king, Artaxerxes. But once you accept that lie, then it's just logical to think, well, if you're going to rebel against the king, you kind of want to become the new king. You're going to want to make yourself king. That's logical. So people see the logic in that, which confirms that even further, the truth of the lie. But logic is not evidence. Something can make sense, something can seem possible, something can sound logical, but if there's no evidence to support it, then it's just made up, it's invented, it's a fantasy. And we don't want to fall for those kind of statements today from the news or from politicians. If it's just made up stuff and there's no real evidence to support it, we don't want to believe it. So you are going to, according to these reports, and of course it sounds kind of official, we have reports. From where? What reports? Show the reports. Who are they from? Who said it? If you say, we've got a report that's put out by this university, by this group of PhDs, and it was published in this magazine, and it's on a YouTube video, you can go and verify that this was truly said. But the vague saying, well, we got reports, is just another way to justify a lie. And you have also set up prophets to proclaim concerning you in Jerusalem, there is a king in Judah. Now they're taking it even further. They're saying, we know why you're rebuilding the walls. You're rebuilding the walls because you want to rebel and set up an independent nation. Next logical thing, you're going to become the king of that independent nation. Now let's take it another step. You have the religious leaders on your side. You've already set them up and told them what you're doing, and they are going to announce and support your claim to kingship. And that makes sense. If someone's going to rebel, they're going to make themselves king. They've got support from religious leaders who are going to support publicly what you're trying to do. That's logical, but being logical doesn't make it true. That is not evidence. So we started with a lie, and then we use logic to build upon the lie a series of things that are supposedly going to happen. Now, one other way you can spot fake news. One thing you can always remember, anything about the future is never a fact, because the future hasn't happened yet. If you say so-and-so is going to do this, this, and this, that's not a fact. That's just conjecture. That's just a guess. And a lot of fake news is based on guessing what people might do in the future. So we got fake news building into a conspiracy theory here. There is a king in Judah, they're going to say. And now the king, now they're talking about the king Artaxerxes, king of Persia. And now the king will hear of these reports. So they spun this great conspiracy theory, and they're threatening Nehemiah that we're going to go to the king and tell him about this. We're going to turn you in. And you're probably going to be put to death for treason. The king will hear the report. So now come and let us take counsel together. So, they start off trying to invite him to a meeting where they could get him out alone, away from everybody, out on the plain of Ono. And then they could take advantage of him, kill him, and tie him up, torture him, put him in jail, whatever they wanted to do. He said no to that. So now they spun this whole theory and said, we're going to go to the king and tell him all this stuff that we've come up with. And then at the end they say, so don't you want to meet with us now? They're trying to scare him, threaten him, and intimidate him into meeting with them so that they could capture him or kill him. Then Nehemiah sent to Sanballat this message. No such things as you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind. I love that verse because I see this happening so much today. I've said that to people so many times. I hear something on the news or I hear a politician make an accusation, and I say, you're just inventing this. You're making this up in your head and repeating it as if it was a fact, and it's totally made up. Let's read that again. Nehemiah's response is, no such things as you say have been done, for you are inventing them out of your own mind. That'd be a great verse to memorize and to apply as we live in the world today. These things just aren't true, and you're making it up. It's coming out of your head. That's the only place this is coming out of, is in your head, in your mind. There's no truth to it. There's no evidence to support what you're saying. It's a complete lie spun into a conspiracy theory. For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking their hands will drop from the work and it will not be done. They're still trying to stop the work on the wall. The wall's finished, but the gates have not been installed. Well, if you've got a big protective wall, but it was about a dozen gates in the city, if the gates aren't there, it doesn't keep anybody out or protect anybody. So the work wasn't done yet, and they were trying to stop the work. It will not be done if we can scare them. And now, Nehemiah does what he often does. He prays. Remember in the first chapter of Nehemiah, we studied and learned about the beautiful prayer that Nehemiah prayed, which is a pattern for our own prayer life. Go ahead and read through the first chapter of Nehemiah again, and make that your format for a prayer of your own to God. And now Nehemiah prays again. This is at least the third time he's gone to God in prayer in this story. He says, "But now, O God, strengthen my hands." He's asking God for his strength. You know, none of us can live this life on our own without the help of God. None of us can live the life that God wants us to live without the help of God. We need the strength of God. We need the inspiration. We need the power of the Holy Spirit in our lives. And God will give us that if we invite him in and allow his Spirit to control and fill our hearts and minds and lives. Now, when I went to the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, son of Mehabel, who was confined to his home. So here's a guy that's confined to his home. I'm not sure why, but a lot of us have been confined to our homes in recent months. So this is kind of interesting how this applies to our current situation. He said, "Let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple. Let us close the door of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. They're coming to kill you by night." So this guy is also an enemy of Nehemiah, and he's trying to trick Nehemiah another way. Their intimidation didn't work initially to set up a meeting, but now they're trying to get Nehemiah to do something else. He's saying, "Look, these guys are going to kill you. They're going to assassinate you. You're not safe. What you need to do is go into the temple of God and lock the doors and hide out and be safe in that sanctuary, the temple of God." Now, we've heard many stories where people sought sanctuary in a church, in a religious building, traditionally in warfare or during massacres or different things in life that have happened. People that were in a church or sanctuary of God were safe there. Other times, the churches have been burned, or people have gone into churches and not respected that cultural idea. But the thing here was, Nehemiah was not a priest. He was not from the Levite tribe. He was not a descendant of Aaron. He was not of the priesthood. And he, from a religious point of view, had no right to be in the temple, hiding out. In fact, it would be a great sin for him to enter the temple. So these guys trying to get him, out of fear, to go hide in the temple. And, people today, they hide in their churches. They have their little social club. They have their little friends. They have their little church services. And they don't get out into the world and confront the world. They're afraid to stand up for economic justice. They're afraid to stand up for racial equality. They're afraid to take a stand. So they hide out behind their religion, and they hide out behind the walls of the church. And that was the temptation coming to Nehemiah here. "They are coming to kill you by night." But Nehemiah said, "Should such a man as I run away? And what man such as I could go into the temple and live?" Because if you go in the temple and you're not supposed to be in there, the presence of God is so strong, it could kill you. You could die. "I will not go in," he says. "And I understood and saw that God had not sent him. But he pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him." This man was paid to do this trick. This man was not of God. He was pretending to be of God. He was pretending to present a message from God to help Nehemiah. But he was really being paid by enemies. And that's certainly something we see going on today. It's kind of funny how both sides of the political spectrum in America have a boogeyman that pays for everything. It's either, if you're on one side, everything that happens, the Koch brothers paid for it. That's why people are doing this. The Koch brothers are paying them. And on the other side, they're saying that this other guy, going blank on his name for a minute, is paying everybody to do this. Paying for a protest, paying for immigrants, whatever. So there's always a boogeyman that's got a lot of money, that both sides always say, he's paying for this, he's paying for that, he's hiring this, he's hiring that. It just gets crazy. And these things are said with no evidence whatsoever. But here this guy was paid to trick Nehemiah. For this purpose he was hired, that I should be afraid and act in this way and sin, and so they could give me a bad name in order to taunt me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, according to these things that they did. Now he's praying to God again, asking God to take care of these enemies in his own way with his own judgment. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, oh my God, according to these things that they did, and also the prophets, Noadiah and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. So they're just trying to make him afraid. They're trying to scare him so they can control him. They're trying to use fear and threats to control somebody. That happens today as well. He didn't give in, he stayed strong, and he prayed to God constantly for help. So a quick review of some of the fake news highlights that came out of this 6th chapter of Nehemiah. Number one, other countries say, very vague, pluralistic, not specific, no real information. They said the news that we're spreading about the rebellion is verified by one of your enemies. Well, of course your enemy is going to verify the news. That doesn't count. You and the Jews are planning an insurrection. A little racism in there, and an accusation of an insurrection that there is no evidence that it was true. They're just making it up. This is your motivation for building the wall. Assigning motivation, assigning thoughts to a person that you could not possibly know unless you were a mind reader. Nothing that's been publicly stated. According to reports, there's always an unknown report, a hidden report, a lost report, a banned video. We know that this has been reported officially on documents, but we don't have them. Seems like they were lost and they're being hidden and there's a cover-up. All that is not any evidence of truth whatsoever. They accuse him of wanting to make a regime change. You're going to, he would become the new authoritarian ruler. He would take over. He would become authoritarian ruler. Also, they told him the religious leaders are going to support your claim to power. No evidence for that. And we're going to threaten you. We're going to bring this report to the king, and you're going to be in serious, big trouble. So just remember Nehemiah's reply to all this fake news, all this spinning of conspiracy theories, all these lies. His message back, Nehemiah 6:8. Remember this verse. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You are just making it up out of your head. I hope today when you see news reports and you hear politicians speak, that you can think clearly and you can discern what things being said are fact-based and what things being said are just made up. And I think this has been going on throughout history. And if we listen to God's word, the 6th chapter of Nehemiah, we can understand how these things are done, why they're done, and give us some clarity to understand the world we're living in today. Well, thank you for listening, and I hope that will help you in your life and in your decisions in America today.